That's me in the very beginning. Now I am a baby and getting zoomed from my mom to my birthday. I don't remember a lot about my younger life, but I remember it was fun and I felt so safe. My mom and dad always happy. I guess my mom's sister was mad that my dad was so great, so she called the police and said he hit my mom. We were all reading and they came. I heard my dad yelling, "There's no way!" My mom was crying loud. Some lady took us away. The court said my parents abused and neglected us. They only loved us. The caseworker lied. I never saw my parents again. I'm still hoping one day they come. I'm a victim of CPS and so are my parents. We need to find justice in all of this madness for all of us that are being abused. It's not fair. Every kid I know has a mom and dad. I know they miss me. I bet they fight every day for me to come home.
Don't get caught like us. Know your rights.
Psalm 127:3. Children are a heritage from the Lord, offspring a reward from Him. This suggests children are a precious gift from God to be valued and cared for.
In the United States, a child a minute is taken into DHS, CPS, and so on custody. The reality is their pics are already selected, you just don't know it. Being perfect no longer matters. It's what the adopted families are looking for.
Who is it stealing the children, you ask?
From caseworker to the White House, the buck
Psalm 127:3. Children are a heritage from the Lord, offspring a reward from Him. This suggests children are a precious gift from God to be valued and cared for.
In the United States, a child a minute is taken into DHS, CPS, and so on custody. The reality is their pics are already selected, you just don't know it. Being perfect no longer matters. It's what the adopting families are looking for.
Who is it stealing the children, you ask?
From caseworker to the White House, the buck stops at all levels, just not where it is supposed to be. The services your family needs. We, the people, have paid for to ensure your reunification. Title 4 says, reunify at all costs. United, we stand means nothing to us when it comes to family values. Children are being ripped away from their families. Parents are reverting to addictive behaviors to cover the pain. The trauma caused by child removal is just being recognized, and the results are atrocious. Termination of parental rights is not healthy for anyone, just profitable for the people enforcing the lie.
It's time Washington listens to the cries of our children, the wails of their mothers, and the rage growing in the fathers. These are our children. Keep your damn hands off them. We are coming to act on the behalf of the children God gave us to protect, and you kidnapped.
In the United States, CPS makes upwards of $3 billion per day on trafficking and selling our children. The corruption may start with the caseworker, but goes through the judicial system, passing the governor through the Senate and into the White House. The entire system has a hand in the business known as CPS.
Our children are stolen every minute of a 24-hour day. They are being robbed of their innocence, their trust, their happiness. As parents, we are isolated and betrayed by a government we trust. States are balancing budgets on kids' lives. Only 12% of the kids taken will be reunified. Title IV funding is being riveted with fraud.
All right, everybody, welcome to Friday Night CPS Hunting Justice. I'm your host, CPS Punisher. Before we get going on this, please, guys, if you're watching this and you haven't subscribed before, please do that. Also, we have a chat that's going. If you guys have questions to anybody that's on here, we are a live show. So if you have questions that you would like us to answer, I mean, we can't promise that we'll get to every one of them, but we'd love to. Please put your state that you're in and let us know what your question is. We'll try to get to those. Share, subscribe, like, any of those things that go along with that stuff, please do, because it helps us get passage out to other people, helps spread the word. We need to educate the people of the United States and the world of what's going on with CPS and how they are removing and kidnapping our children. You know, we talk about all the time what happens when you steal the kids and what to do and what not to do, and how to fight these people in court and all of these other things that go along with your actions, you know, when you're involved in a CPS investigation. What we don't talk about is the activism side. What do you do to have a rally, per se, or even more importantly, what is it that it takes to get a bill in front of Congress or in front of, you know, legislation? How do you go about doing that? Is there a system that, you know, you should follow? All of these questions. How do you even get into that? You know, so tonight we're going to talk a little bit about that, or maybe a lot about that, depending on how this flows goes. So I'm going to bring out the number one fighter for C movement right here. It is Miss Connie Reguli. Here she is. Connie, how we doing tonight?
Good. It's regularly. Say it 5 times out loud.
Reguli. I get it every time. One of these days I'll get it, Connie. I'm going to phonetically write it right here in my notebook so that I get it proper this time.
Like regular, I always tell people, like regulate.
Right. So that's, I would be REGU-LEE, and then I'll get it every time.
Yeah, LE.
Yes.
Yeah, put an E at
Right.
the end of it. Yeah.
That'll be my phonetic writing for this.
And it really doesn't bother me so much, except people who really hate me, like mispronounce it on purpose.
Yes.
And so, I just always grin when they do that because I know what they're up to.
Yeah,
But yeah,
my last name is of the same, and my last name is Guay, and I used to hate getting awards in school because you knew when they were being facetious towards you. They would be like, "And it's Mr. Gay." Like you just know when people are going to go ahead and So I understand that, and I do apologize, and I'm phonetically writing it right here. But Connie,
oh no, you're
Connie, let's talk. How do you get into this stuff? What's the way that we get into becoming a part of this movement? Not just being a part of it, but let's talk about like the more writing a bill side. Like if you want to do something to actually make
yeah.
a purpose, how do you go about this stuff?
Well, I'm going to say that, a lot of people who find us have seen a lot of things that I put up. They know either through Facebook. Oops, I'm getting a little feedback from you over there, I think.
Oh, all right. Where do we go?
Um, but anyway, I don't hear it right now. Maybe it's okay. But, I've done everything from rallies to going to state capitals to having little training seminars to just having gatherings in the state and, using social media, complaining, filing federal lawsuits, filing state lawsuits, trying to defend parents. I mean, I would have to say I've probably had my hands and fingers in just about every single thing that you can try to do to move the needle on the problem that we have. And I find, and I've listened to some of your shows, and I was listening to a show from a mom in Louisiana was talking about this lawsuit that she had prepared. And, a lot of people just who are pro se, just everyday people, try to file some type of a lawsuit. And I applaud them and I feel bad for them at the same time because I know how absolutely difficult it is correctly try to get it past some motions to dismiss and summary judgments and some of those things that are going to come up and come in your future, yet people are trying so hard and they're working so hard to do that. And so I want to talk about putting energy into being in your face with your state government. We all talk about the federal tax dollars, absolutely true. The bulk of the foster care money and the corruption is Title IV-E money. And we should probably have a whole discussion just on the Title IV-E money and the current status of that, because the current status of that is a bit tenuous. But also remember that the states are operating these huge bureaucratic agencies, and about 35 to 40% of the money they're using to operate their agencies are federal money, but about 50 to 60% of the money is actually your state tax dollars. So whether you have income tax or sales tax, whatever other kind of taxes, because we are literally taxed to death, whatever other tax money that you pay out to your state is being used to traffic children. So you have it at the state level and the federal level. And I want people to really understand that, because I think a lot of people are focusing too much on the federal government and trying to move the federal government. Now, my Family Forward Project has done a lot of lobbying in Washington. We are working on some bills there. We've been doing that now since 2015. We're almost at 10 years. We did help to get the Families First Act passed in 2018, but it is, and we're working on another bill now, but it's a monster, okay, a monster. Whenever I talk to people who've reached out to me, I always ask them, who's your state legislator? And amazingly, 90% of the people do not even know who their state legislator is. and the state legislators are in charge of your budget and your tax dollars. So, number one, I'm going to tell everybody, every state legislature has a website, very easy to manipulate or to maneuver, most of them. Go find out who your state legislator is, and then call them up and get to know them and tell them you have a concern and you want to work on legislation and oversight for these horrible state agencies. All right, now, a lot of people are afraid to do it. And I think they're afraid to do it for a couple reasons. One of them is this whole, in America, through this, we don't like to say out loud it's an authoritarian system, but it is an authoritarian system. Kids go to school and it's always, from the day they enter school, it's respect your elders, respect authority, respect authority, respect authority. And so we have some belief that our state legislators have some type of heightened sense of authority or knowledge, and they really do not. Okay, go look at the state legislators in your state, and you're going to find about 30% of them are going to have a law background, but the other 70% are going to be pharmacists and insurance people and real estate people and people with a small business background, anything from the funeral business to farming gear. I mean, they have no more knowledge about the law than you do. Just because they went to some training about how to be a General Assembly member, they really don't know the law. So number one, find out who your legislator is. Number two, take a look and start looking at the people who are on in your General Assembly. Now, they have this big in Tennessee, and they probably have it in most other jurisdictions too. I don't have mine here. They actually produce what's called a Blue Book every year, and it is free if you go down and get it. And it says very high. I mean, you pay thousands of dollars of your tax dollars go to print this book up. But it has every agency listed in it. It has every legislator in it. It has their picture in it. It has the governor's commissions in it. And so it helps you just understand that state government. And then you need to learn to have a conversation with them. And you need to learn how to go in and speak and ask to speak at a General Assembly session. And I feel like I'm really dominating the air here without taking a breath. So anything you want to say or ask me so far?
With us here, we got Melissa and Herbert and Charles. No, I'm all about listening, learning. I mean, I get my mouth heard plenty. This is important information here. And as far as I'm concerned, talk away, please, because we need to this so that we can get this message out to people, and they learn. This is all a learning thing. This movement is all about learning for everybody.
Yeah.
And people need to realize when to close their mouth and listen, opposed to give their opinions and so on. I mean, I know everybody's got a story in this fight. Everybody does. But sometimes we out away our stories to listen for the greater good of the movement, if that's what your fight's towards, just that's just what it is. And it's not that no one cares about the story of us or me or that, but sometimes just listening to you and teaching, okay, these are the things we need to do to make these bills work are more important than talking about my situation. So that's just my advice. So please, all about the learning.
Okay, good. I think somebody may have a lot of background music. Just, I know they don't realize it sometimes, but
We'll figure this one out
I'm
real
not
quick
sure.
here. Let's kill that.
Okay.
Yeah. There we go. All right.
Okay.
So you have something
All right.
to
Yeah. So,
ask? Yeah.
all right.
I think
So
we're good.
I did send you a couple videos.
Yep.
Okay. I did send you a couple of video links we'll get to here in a minute. But I want to talk about talking in committee. So when you go to a committee to speak, you need to speak on a certain bill. So you have to learn how to negotiate the website so that you can find the bills, you can search by subject, you can look them up, and then find bills that you might have an interest in. And trust me on this one, every single year there is a bill that is out there that is about family and family rights. Okay, if you've got that pulled up, let's see which one. I sent you two.
Yeah. Yeah, I have the first one
Is
here
that the
that's
first?
pulled up.
Okay, so the first one, let's just play like the first
Yeah,
up
this
to
is the first one.
about 15 minutes. Yeah. Can you well, I
Sure.
guess
So you
it
want me to
starts
go
like
to
that and then
15
I change it.
minutes?
Okay, go
Or do you
ahead.
want me to play the first?
Yeah, go ahead. This is the this is going to be the parental rights bill that was up this year, and I'm going to tell you what we did about that bill. Okay, no, back up, back up, back up, back up, back up. You way past me. Back up.
Okay, you're on here. Okay, let's find you. You want me to just start this from the beginning?
Well, hold
There you
on.
are.
You'll see.
Yep.
Okay, back just a little bit more. Okay, right there. I think that
All
should.
right.
No, back a little bit more.
A little bit. Okay. Here we go. Keep
Yeah,
going.
because I haven't started speaking yet. Back a little bit more. A little bit
Oh,
more. Where I start. Okay, now this is going to be about the parental rights bill. So I have
okay.
3 minutes to speak, which I plan, I organize, I write it down, and I practice. And then they were able to ask me a couple of questions. So,
Okay. Let's play this baby. See what they say. We're having a wicked storm up here, so I'm wondering if that's
One of the better things that I decided to do
Ah.
in my adult life was to see a therapist.
The biggest barrier to entry has always been finding.
Yeah.
You need someone to do
That's not-
something,
That is
and
not
you
it.
can't.
That's funny.
Okay, hold
Let's
on.
go
That's it.
back here. We're at 3 minutes.
Tennessee.
Yeah. I got us right here. There we go. And there's where we want to be.
Right. Right.
And now let's cross our fingers, dot our I's, and let's hopefully we see Connie.
And I don't think I'm monetized, so you really
Right.
shouldn't see any ads on these clips.
Right. It's chugging here. Well, this is crazy. It must be the weather up here. It's got to be. We had like 100-mile-an-hour winds today. It's crazy. But it's coming. It's coming through. See the wheel of death slowing down, doing all right.
Okay.
Connie, what is this parental rights while we're waiting for this to go through?
Okay, so
what do we do with this parental rights bill? While it's getting ready to come on
okay,
here?
so about 17 states have passed some kind of a parental rights bill. These bills have been passed over really the last 100 years here and there. But in the last 5 years, about 4 bills have passed that have been fairly significant. And Alabama did a pretty good job in the bill that they passed, but most of the other states have tried to tag in a lot of what I call what ifs, but fors, etc. So I made a list. Oops. So here are, I pulled the parental rights bills of every state, and I made this list. And it particularly talks about, does the bill is a parent, or can a parent be a parent and somebody else? And so in 13 of the bills, a parent is a parent, period. But in other bills, they try to tag in other things. And what Tennessee did was they defined a parent as a person with decision-making power, that's the number one horrible thing. And then they said that parental rights do not apply if a law enforcement person interviews your child, or if DCS interviews your child. They are legislating that you have absolutely no parental rights if DCS is involved, which we fought over. And then they're saying if your child is enrolled in higher education, you have no parental rights. So this bill, which ended up being about an 8-page bill, was full of exceptions. And so what I went down and I spoke against it on the very first time it was in subcommittee. And the one we were trying to watch was the Children and Family Affairs Subcommittee. And I spoke, and then a gentleman from an organization called ADF, or Alliance Defending Freedom, spoke. And he is all in support of it. And he's like, oh, this is great. Parental rights. It's the most important thing in the country, blah, blah, blah. And then somebody asked him if other states had passed this bill. And he said, yes, there were 17 other states who had passed it, which is not true. And that's when I went back and did my research and pulled all the parental rights bills and made a chart to show what the different states were doing. And I sent that out to several legislators. And I'm telling you, when you start throwing the facts at them and when you start challenging with facts, with detail, because in the legislature, people will say anything. I mean, it's jaw dropping when you just listen to how they try to sell their bill, because that's how they think they're going to stay in power and keep their seat if they pass legislation. So, okay. So anyway, so I spoke the first time and it was in subcommittee. And so what happened is at the end of that first subcommittee hearing, the sponsor of the bill, Jeremy Faison, rolled it a couple weeks and put it back on the very same subcommittee. And so the next time I went to the subcommittee, I took 3 children to talk about parental rights. And I helped them get their speech together. I told them to rehearse it, to time themselves. I kept their speeches under 3 minutes, like about 2.5 minutes. But all 3 of these kids, 2 of them came from Clarksville, which is about an hour away. And then the other young man came all the way from Chattanooga, which is like 3 hours away. And they all did an amazing job. And so it passed through subcommittee. And then it has to go to full committee. So the full committee was the Civil Justice Committee. And so I went to the Civil Justice Committee, and this time it was me and it was 2 other just activists, lobbyists, mommies, not with huge organizations, but we just met each other through this process. We've all been down there talking to legislators. And so Amy and Bernadette went with me. And we all went up and they talked about blanket consent. And so the second time when I appeared in committee, I thought, okay, instead of just really trying to shut this down globally, I'm going to bring up some very specific legal issues so that hopefully I could get them to engage in a conversation with me about very specific issues. And so I picked legal definition parts of it. I picked the litigation, the cause of action part of it. And I really pointed out 3 different things in the bill. Again, this time, instead of just saying this is a no good rotten bill, you shouldn't be passing about this, it's giving the government too much power, instead of just generally trying to do a wide swath on it, I thought, okay, I'm going to just pick little, very specific things. And so I did. And I really hoped they would ask me a question about it. And because I asked such legally specific questions, they didn't ask me anything because they didn't know what to ask. They didn't know how to remedy those things because they were not well versed enough in the law. So it passed through that committee. So you have the House side and the Senate side, and it had flown through the Senate. I mean, I could really get into sort of the nuances as to how the state legislators vote party lines, which can be bad. And so you have to really work it. And so the House has 99 members. The Senate only has 27, I think. So you have at least more people talking about it on the House side. So this week, it was supposed to be on the House floor, which means if it would have passed on the House floor, the governor would have signed it and it would have become law. And so me and a few other, again, just individual, grassroots, hardworking activists and advocates, we started working it and we did podcasts. We started writing up very detailed summaries and critiques on the bill. we each have our own little email list. So we emailed them out, we posted them. I did a blog on them, and we and one of our activists went down and sat to wait to talk to a couple of the legislators personally. And what we did in going to them was drafting for them some very specific questions that they could ask from the floor, so that they could confront the sponsor of the bill and say, what about this provision in this bill? How is this going to affect the community at large and the public and do public good? And we had 2 sets of questions, very well drafted, with proposed arguments in case the sponsor came back and had anything to retort. And one of our activists went down to the General Assembly, sat in the offices all day long until she could get 15 minutes to talk to the legislators and say, please ask this question on the floor, because even if it's going to pass, we want to create a legislative history on this bill, so that when it goes into the record, if it fails miserably in a year or two, somebody can go back and pull up the legislative history and see that there were comments made on the floor to try to oppose the bill. So what happened was Thursday, I watched it live because I had another conflict I had to take care of. And when they call, and there's several things going on, and things are moving really fast because it's almost the end of session. And when they called the bill, Jeremy Faison got up and he said, hold it on the clerk's desk. Now, when they say hold it on the clerk's desk, that means they're taking it off the calendar for voting and they're moving it to the clerk's office to be held. Now, what we don't know, though, the problem is, because it's all a big trickery, okay? I don't know. If I were going to tell you, if it's like some type, it is crazier than playing the escape room. You have to watch every trick, every sleight of hand, who all the relationships are, what all the comments are. So he moved it to the clerk's desk. And we don't know if that means he could recalendar it next week, or recalendar it in 2 weeks, or slip it back into another committee. We're just not sure. So we cannot give up. And so we are going to continue to work at what I'm doing now is I'm taking the bill that he had drafted and I'm amending it to clean it up, to add better parental rights to it, and to get it back, to get it in a better shape. Because what's going to happen is ADF wants this bill passed really bad, because the bill includes a cause of action. A cause of action is a lawsuit. And so most people would go, oh, Connie, that should be good, because that means that if a parent's rights are violated, they can go to court and they can sue somebody and they can get damages. Okay, well, look, number one, anybody that's watching this knows how imperfect the court system is, right? Like, you can't trust the court system. You can't trust the judges. You can't trust that they're going to follow the law or do what they're supposed to do. So number one, that's a joke, right? That you're really going to make a lot of headway on that. But let's just say you decide to do that. Number two, you're going to have to fork out a bunch of money to get an attorney to take one of these cases. Even though these cases provide for attorney's fees, if you win, no attorney is going to take it up front unless you hand them a check for $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 for their time, because there's no guarantee of winning. There's no history of prevailing in this type of litigation. And so they're going to be very reluctant. And I don't know. If somebody violates your parental rights, let's say, I always give the example. Let's say you're little Johnny, some teacher calls him Julie at school and lets him use the pronoun she. Are you now going to go sue that teacher? And what are your damages? There's no history of what kind of damages that somebody can expect for that. And so you're going to fork out a whole bunch of attorney's fees. There's not going to be damages. Attorneys are not going to take them. People are going to be moaning and groaning and complaining because they're going to get attorney fee bill for 40 grand. So then it's like, well, why would they do this? So let's go back to ADF, Alliance Defending Freedom. So ADF, Alliance Defending Freedom, there are two separate organizations. Alliance Defending Freedom is one organization which took in $95 million last year. ADF Foundation is the second organization that took in about $2.5 million. They're both out of Scottsdale, Arizona, Maricopa County. Crazy stuff going on in Arizona in so many ways. I can't even get, that is such a bunny trail. I can't even go there. The head of ADF is Michael Farris. So Michael Farris is known to all the homeschool people because Michael Farris started the HSLDA, which is the Homeschool Legal Defense Association. And so he did a really good job actually getting that off the ground, getting it started. He also then had parentalrights.org. Parentalrights.org did a pretty good job in the 90s of bringing a lot of class action lawsuits against CPS organizations and making a ton of money in attorney's fees. That's what they did. They are, they're an aggressive law firm and almost predatory, actually. And so ADF is also the law firm that did the what's best known, I think, is the wedding cake case out of Colorado, where they refused to make a wedding cake for a gay couple and they got sued and there was big litigation as to whether or not it was constitutional. And so ADF took on that case and they got a whole bunch of notoriety. They got a whole bunch of donations. They got a whole bunch of support because they took on this case that everybody felt really bad for the business owner. So now ADF wants to pursue litigation for parental rights. They think it is a golden goose, a goose egg for them, a golden goose egg for them. They think they're going to make thousands of dollars on litigation and attorney's fees for these parental rights violations lawsuits. Okay, so what does that mean to you? Well, that means who's going to pay. So if this is a teacher or a DCS worker or a social worker at school, so who do you think is going to end up paying those fees? You, the taxpayer, right? So this is now going to affect the tax base. It's going to affect the money that we have for education. And we don't even know who's going to pay. Is it going to be this substitute teacher who called Julie Johnny, who's making, $12 an hour? Are they going to get sued? Are they going to be the target? Or is the school and the school board, are they going to be responsible? There are so many loose ends on this that you cannot define. And then there's a whole section also for medical. And then you're going to be suing medical providers because a therapist allowed your child to, claim that they're a different gender. So it's just creating more chaos. Like, this is not the way to resolve this. This is not the way to solve our problems. But ADF thinks that they have 4,500 attorneys that they associate with across the country. They think that they're going to make big bucks in attorney's fees. Now, let me also tell you this about Michael Farris. Michael Farris, and this is all public knowledge, you can pull up their 990s. Michael Farris makes $1.2 million a year. $1.2 million a year.
Wow.
Yeah, wow. And so this is just more, I call this just more predatory dollars on the heads of our kids, when the reason that families are in these positions anyway is because of don't have the right services. They don't have the right resources. They need to have, resources and funding and services for kids to make their family life better, instead of turning our government agency into our whole government into a predatory device that is cashing in on kids. So this was a cash in on kids scheme. So we had 3 bills in the Tennessee legislature this year that I call the Tennessee trifecta Kids for Cash scheme. And so this was one of them, the parental rights bill, because this was going to be all about filing lawsuits in the state of Tennessee against psychologists and school social workers and therapists and teachers to try to catch them if they violated your parental rights because they gave your child a book in school that had unacceptable sexual content in it. Now, I absolutely agree the school should not be giving the children books with sexual content in it, especially if elementary school. But turning it into just more litigation is not the answer. So that was one. So the second Kids for Cash scheme, you're going to love this one. I may have to pull this out if I can find it. Ah, here it is. This is great. Okay, so here is the second Kids for Cash scheme they have. They put out a bill. Oh, let me tell you how they did it. So learning how to be a state lobbyist. Yeah, we really need to get down to the nitty-gritty on this and some training videos. When you are looking at bills, so on most legislative websites, you can search bills by subject and you can find bills on CS, family law, etc. But they have this trick that they pull, and it's called a caption bill. And so what they do is they submit 2 lines. And this one said, or one of them said, that the schools shall keep a record of children's allergies or something like that. It was like 2 sentences. And then they get in committee and they come in with this like multi-page long bill that you've never seen before. And they try to get it passed. The second one, I just happened to catch it because I was sat in a committee one day when I just had a little extra time. And it is they call it the Opportunity Public Charter School. Opportunity being the key word. Now, as we now know, because we've caught on to some of the government schemes, I thought it was just the liberals. It's obviously not. It's the conservatives too. But they're stealing all the words and giving them new meanings, right? So a word like opportunity, you think like, what is this? Like they're going to teach them how to run businesses and like, be entrepreneurs. No. An opportunity boarding school is where they are going to place at-risk children. Okay, now here are the list of at-risk children. Children who have dropped out of school, children who've been adjudicated in delinquent, or they're awaiting being adjudicated delinquent, which means they've just been charged with something. They've never been found guilty. A student has been detained or incarcerated in a juvenile detention center, even if it's for 1 day, by the way. They have been retained. They've been held back in school and twice in K through 8 or once in high school, and they are not going to graduate with their 4-year cohort. A child who is chronically absent, which can be 5 days of school. A child who is pregnant or a parent. A child who, hang on here, I have to turn the page, has a documented substance abuse. A student has experienced abuse or neglect, not that they've ever been taken from their parents or been adjudicated dependent or neglect. They've just experienced dependency or neglect. So an opportunity, so they're going to put all these kids together. There is no requirement that they have any specialized services for any of these children. I don't know what they're going to do with the pregnant mom's babies. They're probably going to put them in CPS care and then adopt them out. And these are residential schools. Okay.
Right.
And it's public. So they're going to use our public dollars to create residential boarding schools for what they call at-risk children. And 75% of their enrollment has to be at-risk children, but they can have 25% that are not. So I went in and I spoke on this bill. And on this bill, I said that I says, I can just imagine that DCS is looking forward to this so that they can stick all those teenagers in foster care in there because they don't know what to do with them. And then they amended the bill and like, well, DCS can't use it for foster care unless their child is, blah, 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 blah. So this is another bill. So this bill has actually passed through committee. But when they write a bill, they also have to talk about the money that is involved in making the bill work. And so this would be an incredible amount of money. And in what's called a fiscal note, in the fiscal note, they said that they had no idea how much it would cost. So they did this other little trick, which is what they call putting it behind the budget. So what that means is they're going to have the Tennessee budget in committee next week on Tuesday, and that will be and they'll be talking about these bills. There's no way that they can even anticipate what this is going to cost because they have no I was just looking at some of your comments there because they have no idea. I mean, and charter schools are owned by private businesses, even though they're public schools, which means the public has to have access to them. They are actually managed and operated by private entities or nonprofit entities separate from the government. So that was the second Kids for Cash of the Tennessee trifecta. The third bill in the Tennessee trifecta was school vouchers. And I am not the education expert. I have a very close cohort who is the education expert, and I let her fight that battle and just give me direction and tell me what to do because she knows it inside out. And she knows that I know the CPS issues and angles inside out. So the deal is learning something very well. And most of the people that are watching or been involved or that you interview, they are beginning to understand the problem and the system. So what we have to take them to is the next level is getting them to take, while their legislature is in session, finding a day off every week to go down there, even if it's half a day, to talk to their legislators, to go down there, to carry signs, to sit in committees, to call them on the phone, to email them so that we can affect change. That's the only way we're going to do it. It's going to have to come down to the citizens making the change, not the machine itself.
Right.
Am I wearing you guys out?
No.
I see Brenda Cameron commenting on some things that I've actually been talking about with several people. You started off, and I didn't quite understand what you meant exactly. You said that people focus too much on federal law. I think that people don't focus nearly enough on federal law because, as I commented the last time we met last week, and several times since, there are no accidents in these legislative sessions. Brenda's pointing out that they've got similar program in Florida, and I've heard about the program in Florida. I've also heard about the program here in Louisiana and in California. Basically, these residential homes, basically concentration camps for kids. Mm-hmm. This is a nationwide phenomenon, and I haven't looked into it yet, but I am sure that basically it has its origin in some federal tax incentive, and it has that basically there's a federal program that is creating this, just like the foster care scandal of the past 10 years. that came entirely from federal promotion. And so, I mean, Title 42, the Public Health and Welfare title, is by far, I mean, except for national defense, it is the largest element of the federal budget and the code of the United States code and related code of federal regulations. And so when you see these things happening everywhere, you've got to ask, where is it coming from? It's coming from Washington. And I mean, when all these programs that are called welfare and security programs, opportunity programs, I mean, yes, what a load of, you know what that is. It's an opportunity for people to make big money. Like the first element of your trifecta is a tremendous opportunity for lawyers to make money. Second one is a tremendous opportunity for builders and managers of these facilities to make money. That is the real welfare. And that is the engine of moving the American economy right now. And that's, I think, something tremendously important. You know, people need to, one of the questions you need to ask your legislators is whether they are aware of where the incentive for this is coming. And, you know, have they examined, I mean, you were talking about what simple things people could do, ordinary people could do to lobby and participate in the system. Well, I think one really good thing to do is to ask, where is the authority, and to whom do these programs benefit, really? And just start, doing a very practical analysis of, is it constitutional? Who in Washington pushed this? Who in Nashville or Baton Rouge or Tallahassee pushed this? Cui bono? For whom is it good? And is there any constitutional basis?
So,
do you know what I mean? Have you looked into what the tax incentive aspect of this, and whether this isn't in fact a federal program? Because if it's happening in almost every state in the union, there must be a federal program behind it.
Well, so Title 4E money is a program that is never subject, federal program. It is never subject to sequester. It is a use it or lose it scheme, and it's pretty much a dollar for dollar match. So therefore, it's an endless fund. It's endless. And then on top of that, any child that you get into the system, you can also tag on Title 10 money, which is the Medicaid money. And then there are, of course, a few other funds that you can cash in on. There is a book written, and actually you may enjoy this book. It is called, it's called Injustice, Inc. And it's written by a professor named Daniel Hatcher. It is only this big. It's the read itself is only about 150 pages, and then it has about 150 pages of endnotes. So everything is very well cited. And he talks about all the streams of money that are attached to children. And there is a company called Justice Benefits, Inc. in Texas, and Justice Benefits, Inc. contracts with state and local governments so that once a court gets jurisdiction over a child, all they have to do is send Justice Benefits, Inc. the social security number and date of birth of the child, and then Justice Benefits, Inc. will basically send you back a portfolio of all the places where you can obtain federal dollars. And then, of course, they get a cut off the top of that. So they are total mercenaries, and they help these state and local governments monetize children. So there is not specifically, because under the Family First Act, the legislation that passed in February 2018. Oh, thank you for that, Larry. Yes. Um, under the Family First Act, there are certain criteria that were to occur as a condition of continuing to get Title IV-E money. One of them was the closure of group homes. And so group homes were absolutely dismal. They were getting all kinds of bad reports. And so they kept pushing out the deadline, but the last deadline I think was October 2022. And these states had to start closing group homes. And so since they had to close their group homes, they needed another alternative. That's all this is. This is just a group home with a new fancy label on it, but they had to close a group home. So that's another reason. So I know, because think about, of course, let's talk about education money. Okay. So in the education funding program, which is also substantially federal dollars, so it's federal and state dollars, the education funds are what is called TISA, T-I-S-A. I don't know what it stands for, but under TISA funds, you basically get a dollar amount for every head, every child, for every day. However, if you have a foster child enrolled, you get a 25% bonus. Okay. So and when I was running for juvenile court judge, I was campaigning against the new $200 million juvenile court facility that they were putting in Williamson County. And they were bragging about the fact that they were going to have 48 mental health beds in a juvenile detention facility. Now, and I told everybody, I said, look, all you have to do is have a judge, not a doctor, a judge say that the child is severely emotionally disturbed, which put that child under the custody of the state. And as a severely emotionally disturbed child, they rank at one of the highest levels of care for state's custody, which every time you increase the level of care, you increase the money. So when they're severely emotionally disturbed, they're going to be yielding about $400 to $500 a day. So that's about $17,000 a month. And then if there's any way they can enroll them in school, of course, they would get that additional TISA funds. And the way these state facilities operate, or these county facilities operate, is they basically rent out rooms for other county detainees in which their county does not have room. It's like an Airbnb of juvenile detention centers. So if Rutherford County has a couple kids they don't have room for, they ship them over to Williamson County, and now Williamson County has a profit center, and they have to have a profit center because the juvenile detention center will be built with not only government bonds, which they have to pay back, but with private equity funds. And if you've studied or you know anything about private equity funds, private equity companies anticipate and plan on a 25% return on their investment. So you have to have a very profitable and lucrative juvenile jail to be able to keep that cattle rolling.
TISA is apparently Tennessee Investment in Student Achievement. Does that sound right?
That could be it. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Tennessee, the TISA public funding formula upgrades the way Tennessee funds public education for the first time in over 30 years to empower each student to read. Okay.
Yeah. So the theme behind that was if we attach the money to the child instead of the school, that we will have better results. That was their sales pitch on that. There's a lot of people who think it's not good. that the school should be the investment and not necessarily the student, because it's based on literally the days a student appears in school. So if you have an empty seat in your classroom as a teacher, it is affecting the bottom line of the school. And then, the teachers are criticized for it. It ended up being, I don't even know what to compare it to, but it's ended up being a detriment and not a benefit.
Isn't that interesting? Because before we went live, somebody, I think it was Mr. Punisher here, was talking about the monetary system and the straw man theory that some patriots subscribe to. And part of that theory, of course, is that the government monetizes each individual through their social security number, and that places a value on each person from the time they're born. And I have never seen any direct evidence that that is true, but isn't it eerie how closely similar what you're talking about is to that myth?
Yes,
Well, that blows my mind.
Yes.
Right.
Blows my mind.
Yes.
Basically, each student, focus on the student, not the institution. Okay, so each student is worth something.
Yes. And the same thing with the foster care kids, right? Any child who comes into the jurisdiction of the court. So keep in mind that includes, if you want to move it to the farthest extent, that includes any child who comes into the jurisdiction of the court in a divorce or paternity action where child support is due under Title 4D. Because Title 4D is a whole different funding scandal that is based upon a complete fictional income, a complete fictional debt base, and these agencies, the state agencies that increase this fictional income and fictional debt get more money for creating that fiction. How about that?
Again, it's very closely related to the thing I've been telling patriots for years. You must not believe that.
Well, and Connie, it's funny that you talk about how the higher level they put the kid in, the more money they bring in. Here in Alabama, with any child typically over the age of 12, they rate them, most of them, a level 4, and they're dumping them off in the psych facilities. They don't do anything for their mental care, and they don't do anything for their education. They take them out of school, out of the family's home, out of schooling, out of, counseling and all the things they were getting in home services, to throw them into these different psych facilities. And I believe Tommy James up near you is actually working on a class action because they found that Laurel Oaks in Dothan, Alabama, and Hillcrest up there in Birmingham area, that the staff was actually beating the kids. Not just kid-on-kid violence, but staff-on-kid violence. I know my own daughter was almost sexually assaulted in one of those facilities.
Yeah. So, for instance, I'm going to show you this. So this just came out, I think, in 2023, because it reports up to 2022. So I just printed this off. You can read that. Designed to fail. Okay. And this is all about how many pages? Let me see here. I don't know how many pages this is. It's probably 80 pages. And it's all about the Wilder facility where they're housing children, and how bad it is. The abuse by staff is one of the the whole page of abuse by the staff, locking them down because they took a shower too long, so they end up in solitary confinement, or failing to report abuse by staff. Yeah, this is they just did a whole report on it.
You know, and it's so sad because someday we will need our youth to assist us in our elder years, and our kids are going to hate us after what they're being put through.
Yeah, and also I have developed a friendship with she's actually a foster mom, and but before becoming a foster mom, she got a criminal justice degree and was serving as a youth services officer in a facility in Nashville. And she only worked there 4 months, and it was so bad. And she tried to report the abuse so many times, and they would not listen to her. And they finally fired her, and she filed a retaliatory discharge claim. And I think she settled for him. I have no idea how much or anything, but she was so frustrated with what she saw.
Yeah. National Action Network just started working with one of the youth facilities up in your area.
Well, you remember that Netflix? There's that Netflix series, The Program, where those kids did that.
Yeah.
That was really good too. I mean, and that was a voluntary program that their parents spent thousands and thousands of dollars.
Yeah, and I actually, through my law practice, had a case that a dad did that to a daughter, and they put her in, I don't know, she did something, and he sent her to juvenile detention one Friday afternoon, and they literally picked her up from the juvenile detention center at 3 a.m. and shipped her off to Montana, and her mom didn't even know where she was.
Oh, wow.
And the judge the judge had to be in on it because the judge had to let her out of the juvenile detention center in the middle of the night. So,
now, who's the overseer of these programs? I mean, they're created, right? Like in this stuff you're talking about, they're created, but who's watching this stuff?
They're privately run. Mm-hmm. For a lot of money. If you watch the program, you saw about some of the money. And if you notice, if you recall in the last segment of that, where the girl made the phone call to act like she wanted to place her child in a facility, they asked the child if she was adopted and if she was getting adoption assistance money so that they could use that for the program.
Wow. I do recall. That's just nuts that there are these things that are going on, but there's no oversight. You're talking about tons and tons of money that are going into something, and you're telling me that no one's paying attention to it. I mean, other than going back to the reports at the legislature or whatever, right, saying that everything's going well or whatnot. There's no one actually watching these. There's no independent counsel that's overseeing them. There's no. So, I mean, there's a problem in itself. It's almost like the CPS is the same way. Who is watching these people? Nobody. I mean, you have an oversight committee.
Some of that is supposed to be like your group of ombudsmen and stuff that are supposed to be there to advocate for the kids and the family. Yeah. But heck, they've just been ruled to be as evil as CPS.
Yeah, so this report just came out of Senator John Ossoff's office. Senator John Ossoff had some hearings last October in Congress, and he had a couple judges come up from Georgia, and then he had some other families who had to deal with foster care. He had a couple attorneys, and they then collected a lot of data, and they pulled the NCMEC report about the missing foster children. And there are several findings in here, but one of the findings in particular was that the parts of the program that were supposed to provide be an independent overseer, such as the citizen review panels, were actually being controlled by the agency, so that there was really no outside source or independent source who was able to review what was happening, which is a problem.
Well, I guess, that's the place that someone could start pushing some legislation right there, right? Like some people could start demanding that there's overseers or there's there's, you know,
Yeah. So
room
yeah.
for
So
everybody.
there. Okay. So that takes me to a couple of things. One of them we're working on, and the other one I have an idea for, and I was going to try to get somebody to present it this year, but I think I may be able to do this next year. So the first one is what's called the Family Advocacy Program. And one of the clips I was going to show you was back in 2021. I did get a state legislator to propose a bill for family advocacy, and she got shut down because that committee, the chair of that committee, has a ill feeling towards me, I guess is the nicest way to say it. And part of it is because DCS goes up there and badmouths me and talks about what a horrible person I am and I'm a criminal and how I, don't follow DCS orders. And I mean, so she gets all grumpy with me, all grumpy face with me. But we tried to do the family advocate bill and they shut it down and they wouldn't do it. And so I also drafted a bill for what I call the Safe at Home Commission. And I'm going to, I drafted it a couple different times. And I have used Chat GPT to help me on some of the language, which is very interesting because it's helped me draft a couple bills. But I think it may be timely to try to present that, which would require being made up of peer parents and psychologists or social workers who are independent of the system or work in another state agency, because like in Tennessee, we have an agency called the Department of Developmental Disabilities. No, the Department of Mental Health, Developmental Disabilities and Substance Abuse, I think is what it's called. And it's clearly a helping agency. It's an agency that's there to help people. And they even went before the governor and told the governor that there were times when they would be able to help a family with a child, an older child who was disabled, but DCS was taking these children and putting them in foster care, which cut them off from providing services. So if we could engage some people, for instance, in that agency, perhaps some people in special education, and then some peer parents, that maybe we can create this Safe at Home Commission independent of the agency to see if we can, get kids back at home faster.
Hey, that being said, ideally, and this is kind of away from this subject, but not really. So we know through statistics, 12% of the kids are being reunified with their family. And that's just using their numbers in simple math. We're getting 12% of that. In your opinion, what is the right amount of time for a child to be removed from his family if there is an actual need for a child to be in a family to get services? What is that time span that you find would be a fit and acceptable level to remove a child, again, if that is truly needed, to rehabilitate so that they would reunify? Have you guys looked into that at all, Connie?
Okay. Yeah. So you want to get into that discussion a little bit. Yeah, I've got some stuff for you here. Hang on. I got my little box of tricks over here. Hold on.
Yeah, no worries. I mean, this is just, we all talk about the standards and all of that stuff, but what is the acceptable, like the time period? Because the studies show, first of all, removing a child from their family isn't the right thing to do, even if they're in a home of a medium amount of abuse, meaning physical or mental. They say that still the injury done or the trauma done to the child from removing them far supersedes that of what the end results are of them going to a foster home or being in a program. But there are situations where a kid needs to be removed from a home. I mean, that facts are facts. There are kids out there that are being abused terribly and they need help. But again, it does say like that is their parents. That is their biological parents.
Yeah.
So what is the what is that? Like that. I'm just curious. I didn't even know if there was an actual number where people had even looked into this or talked about it or focused on it. I would assume that they must, because everybody's talking about taking the system down. Well, there's got to be, there's got to be another side to this story, because we can't just destroy something or take it down and break it apart and then not put something in to implement it either.
Okay, so I'll tell you a few things. I don't have all my things really organized here, but I'll show you this. Let me see if I can get it to the point. Okay, so you see those three lines, the
Yes,
pink,
ma'am.
the blue, and the yellow. Okay, so the pink line is foster care. Okay.
Okay.
And the foster care goes up. Okay. The blue line is adoption. Okay. Now the
Yeah.
adoption goes up, but not as exponentially, right? You see
Right.
that? It's just gradual.
Yeah.
The yellow line says waiver. Okay. Now you'll see
Okay.
the waiver drops like a rock. Okay. So what the waiver was that the Title 4E waivers, which started in 2014, it began in October 2014 and ended in September 2019. So the Title 4E waivers were basically the precursor to the Family First Act. Under Title 4E, you cannot provide services for a family unless you take the child. And so what the waiver did back in 2014, who was president then? Somebody help me out with that. Was that under Obama?
That was Obama.
Obama.
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't know if he had anything to do with it or not. But anyway, in 2014, they introduced the Title 4E waivers, which said that you can use Title 4E money for services without removing a child. It was a temporarily time set program. It was not to continue forever. And they did implement it in Tennessee. And with that waiver, they were able to reduce some, but you'll see if you look where those lines cross, they didn't really reduce it a lot, because you would think that when we were up here over on this side with really high waiver money, that these two lines, and actually this one is really low, the foster care is really low, the adoption's a little higher, but we had it up till 2019 and it's still growing. So I mean, it helped some, but it didn't help as much as you would think.
Right.
All right. So the other thing that I started investigating was, we know, here's the budget. Here's another thing, looking at your state dollars. And this helps if you put this together and you go talk to your General Assembly about it. I did a chart on the annual budget for DCS over a 10-year period.
Yep.
So you can see when you come in at 2013 at 732 million, and in 2020 it's 993 million, and every year basically it increased at about 30 million a year. A couple years it was 50 million. But when we got the new commissioner in, the very first thing she did was come in and ask for 100 million more. This year she asked for 150 million more.
Wow.
So
wow.
Yeah. So then you look at, here's another stat for you. This is parental substance abuse. So this right here is an AFCAR's report. Okay, so if you want to get the true statistics, and you can Google this, just type in AFCARS reports, and you can get those. You can get it for the U.S. and you can get it for every single state. And this one is Tennessee, and it shows you that about 15,000 kids were in foster care. And this shows you that, where's my number here on reunification? Case plan goal. So the goal to reunify was 68%, and the actual reunification rate was 47%. So 47% of the kids did reunify, and the time in care was about 15 months. Now that's a long time in the life of a
Right.
child,
Right.
you know? And when you look at the age of the children, so it has that down here, it has the ages of the children, and half of the kids are 6 or under. So when you've got half of the children 6 years old or under, a year and a half is a long time. Is a super, yeah, it's a quarter of your life, you know, it's a super long time. It'd be, you know, to an adult, it'd be the equivalent of being held someplace for 5 or 6 or 7 years, right? Now the other thing, go ahead.
I mean, that is the reason they point out through all these psychological studies that the long-term harm done by the younger kids that are removed, go into care, that they have trust issues for the rest of their life from it.
Yeah, they do. All right. So the circumstances associated with removal, we have a little chart on that over here, over here, right? So 36% is substance abuse with a parent, 2% substance abuse with a child, and 1% alcohol abuse with a parent. So that is 38, 39, about 40% of the kids, of those 15,000 kids, are going into care because of some type of substance abuse. Okay? Now, let's talk about substance abuse. You're going to love it. I'm such a numbers person. I just love to look up all these numbers. So you come over here and you say, oh, here's another chart I found. Woo. This chart says these are the number of admissions into foster care. Again, this is a DCS report. This is 2018, and this one shows that statewide 41%, and they have the numbers for 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So over this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 year span, it doesn't change. Okay, it's 38%, 41%, 38%, 34%, 38%, 41%. Okay, so if you were a state legislator who wanted to make life better for children in the state of Tennessee, you should be looking at that number right there and say, okay, so if we can address substance abuse, if we can figure out a better way to handle addiction in this state, we might keep half of the children out of foster care. All right. And so then we go, okay, here's another numbers for you. This is statewide criminal court. Okay, criminal court. So criminal court stats, so I have this little chart right here. So if you look at the criminal court stats out of, hold on here. Out of 243,000 arrests made in a year's time, 80% of those, or 80,000, so that's about at least a third of them, are drug and narcotics. Okay, down here.
Of course, yeah. Right.
Right now, that does not count. What you can't tell on here is, for instance, out of the theft arrest, right? So we have 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 130,000 thefts. So what we can't tell from here is how many of those thefts are drug related. I used to be a prosecutor. I'd say 75, 80% of them, right, are somehow related to substance abuse or drug addiction or of your thefts. And then you have burglary, 22,000. Yeah, that's probably related to drug use, somebody trying to steal something to get more drugs. And then you have assaults, right? So assaults, I used to be a prosecutor. I'd say that most domestic assaults have some type of substance abuse or alcohol abuse associated with it. and that is another 100,000. So I would venture to say collectively 70% of our criminal court work is substance abuse related. So we have 40% of the children taken because of substance abuse. We have, I don't know, but let's just be very conservative. 60%, 65% of our criminal activity is substance use. All right, what do I have on this side? Hang on. I have filings and dispositions on this side. On this side, I have another chart. So on this side, I have burglary and drugs and probation violations. Those three things are 60, 70, 80, are 80,000 of the cases filed out of 150,000. So half of them. So if we want a better world, and, you know, for us deep state believers that the CIA is the biggest drug dealer in the country, we would look at drug use and substance abuse, right? That if we could figure out a way to get to the people who have drug addiction and get them treatment, get them services, find out what they need, jobs, help them get jobs. If we could address substance abuse, look at how much money we put into it between criminal court and arrest and drug enforcement units and CPS. And I mean, look at how much money gets tangled up. If you put $1 to it, how could that be used? I mean, we could put every drug addict in a rehabilitation center for a year and pay all their expenses for a year and give them job training and help them identify where to move and how to, you know, write a check and do whatever, if we could knock out the problems with addiction.
But they don't want to do that. Let's not do that. Let's keep them coming through the jails and through this, and so they, you know, they're not going to
job security.
They're not going to help.
And then this one too. Here's another interesting little chart. This one shows the number of children born out of wedlock. And so in Tennessee, 44% of the children are born out of wedlock. If you're Black, it's 77%.
Yeah, we were playing with numbers the other night, and it showed, I don't remember the specifics, but really what they're targeting is what we came up with was lower to middle class white 2-parent homes are the number one product of CPS investigation and taking of their children. That's the numbers we came up with. And then it went to the Black communities was like 86,000, and then the Hispanic were 84,000. But anyway, these numbers were just showing that the 2-parent homes are where they're going first.
Are they married?
Because
are
they
they
want to
married
destroy the family
parents?
unit. You know, like
Are
that.
they
That
married?
was it. And
Are
what's
they
that?
married? Are they married?
They only
parents?
said 2-parent. The statistics only said 2-parent homes. It only said 2-parent homes, so I can't give you an exact fact on that one.
2-parent homes when they started.
Families or 2-parent home. Right.
Yeah, they were typically 2-parent homes when it started.
So,
and then the department comes in and divides the family and steals the kids. And
yeah, I mean, like that's another thing to talk about. Anybody that's in any type of addiction program or anything, the number one thing that you're supposed to do is have a great support network next to you so that you can beat this thing. And CPS just comes in and automatically removes that from you. You know, they take your kids, they take your family, they do all of these things to remove you and make you the furthest thing from it. How you expect somebody to recover in those conditions? You can't. It can't happen. And then these people recover for 6, 8, 9 months. They have a relapse, which a relapse is part of these programs. Anybody that knows anything about recovery knows that you're going to relapse. Not that you want it to happen, but it's going to happen. But the second they relapse, they shut down these people's plans and then they're out again. Like they just continuously run these people and these addiction things. It's disgusting what they do to them. What about this? Hold on, I'm just now bouncing off, and I know we got to get out of here soon, or we should have been already 22 minutes ago. But LT Larry says, my granddaughter has been held since 4 months old. She's now 30 months old. There's something going on there, Larry. We don't know anything about that, but I mean, they're past permanency, they're past all of that stuff. You've got some issues there, but
yeah, that's a situation I know oh too well.
Yeah, Militia knows Militia. Maybe that's what we should start calling you, Militia.
Militia and the Punisher.
Yeah.
No, Connie, in my case been going on now almost 24 months, and they still have not established any dependency whatsoever. And the workers have testified that there's absolutely no allegations, but the judge used to be the attorney for our local DHR. And so he does whatever she wants. And I heard today, Darren, the attorney for DHR at 3:58 filed a continuance.
Go figure. Imagine that. This is how many now?
Total continuances, 17.
Yeah,
all by the opposing side. So yeah, in my case, the only thing they've ever had is just the shelter order, which is so far expired that they can't even look to figure out where to dig it up.
Yeah. All right, guys, we are way past our time here. Connie, you got any last words for anybody?
No, again, I'm just going to say y'all got to learn how to work the state legislature and like find a law, find something to either amend a law, improve a law, get to know them, talk to them, encourage other people in your state to call them and talk to them about the problems, because I mean, we have really worked it in Tennessee to get them to address or to look at those problems. I have a really good advocate in Illinois, and she's really getting the Illinois people to call their state legislators, and they actually put in a kinship bill today that did get passed through committee, so it's moving on to try to get passed in made law. But it will help. I mean, we can't well, and I will say this, I told you at the beginning I was going to tell you something else about CAPTA. CAPTA has technically expired. As of September 30th, 2023, there is no CAPTA. So they're still getting money. That's a whole nother issue. But CAPTA has technically expired.
So what does that mean to a lot of things? That's illegal money right now, because isn't Congress supposed to make sure that money is all spoken for? Isn't that illegal?
Well, as we were told in Washington, this is the exact words that we received from a legislative aide. We fund a lot of things that are expired. So, yeah. But technically and legally, the money is no longer authorized. I don't know what to do with that information. I would like to figure out a way to use that information, but that's just what people need to know. Nice. That's all I have to say. And I'm tired too. I'm sleepy.
Charles, you got any last words for this week?
Well, it's just, I know I sound like a broken record, but I think it's so important to keep the big picture in mind. And trying to tweak these systems that exist and make them a little bit better is one thing, but we need it. When you talk about the percentage of children that are born out of wedlock, that shows the collapse of Christian values. It shows the collapse of traditional society. The bedrock of traditional society is the family. And if there are no families that are united by faith, then the society as we know it is going to collapse, and that's what they want. I mean, a little bit earlier, Brenda was answering. Somebody asked who's behind it all, and Brenda answered in the comments, DOJ. Well, DOJ may be behind some of it, but it's even more likely to be HHS, because HHS is the overarching agency that coordinates all these welfare programs. And it's welfare and the abdication of the family in favor of the state as the custodian of our children that's killing us more than
Yeah. And you know, there was a documentary released on March the 4th, and it's on YouTube. It's a PBS documentary, but it's a history of eugenics, and it's a very well written documentary that tells, I think, pretty much the truth, and it's all about destroying the mother. So it's the destruction of motherhood. So yeah, take a look at that. If you haven't seen it, take a look at the program, get educated, get prepared to help me start working these at the state level.
How about you, Melissa?
Hey, Connie, I got a question for you because I mean, he was just mentioning HHS. What are they doing at more of a state level to find all of these kids that have went missing through our system? I mean, we know that what's her name, Tara Rodas, you know, speaks out for all the immigrant kids that have vanished in the system. But I know of several families here in Alabama that they don't even know what's happened to their kids. The state says they don't know where they're at. And these children have just vanished. I know a couple years ago, they transferred some fosters from here in Alabama down to Florida, and some of them were killed in a trafficking ring.
Well, I mean, I don't know what every state's doing. So, you know, I know we passed a couple trafficking laws here, but yeah, everybody needs to look into their own state and see what's going on.
Hey, Melissa, that looks like a good place for you to start in Alabama.
Yeah, there you go.
Putting some legislation together to find these kids. Herbert.
Oh, trust me, I make waves every time I can.
Yeah, for a little lady, you sure do push some water. Herbert, how about you, my man?
You seem to be muted.
Oh, Herbert. Hold on, Herbert.
Go ahead, okay, buddy. I have Connie, was very good presentation you gave us, but I have a question in regards to police officers, law enforcement. What should we do or not do so we don't facilitate and fall into the trap of causing issues?
Yeah, so I'll take
basically we are just the guards to keep the peace. But what would you recommend we should or should not do?
You mean that the police officer should or should not do?
Yes, I'm a police officer.
Okay. Great question. Thank you for that. So, so the bad news is last year here in Tennessee, we passed this new law. I call it the Connie law because they arrested me for something that was not illegal, and then they turned around and made it illegal, where it says that basically if CPS gets an ex parte order, anybody who happens to have the child, even though they don't know about the order, can be arrested for custodial interference, but they have to go get a warrant. So as a police officer, and you know, I read a lot of civil rights cases about probable cause and arrest and detention and detaining. You know, I would say as a police officer, and I've seen lots of videos, you know, the police go walking in the house of CPSs with them. I would say follow your code related to search and seizure, and just, you know, if DCS tries to force you in a position to do something, you should not do it. And I'm going to give you a very detailed example. I've been working with a mom, and she was charged with truancy because her teenager had missed school. The police came and picked her up and took her to the sheriff's department, and DCS came to the house and asked the the police officer to put the children in the back of the police car and go to the gas station and hold those two children in the police car. She didn't have a court order. She didn't have nothing, but to hold those kids in the police car until she could get a court order. I would say, as a police officer, say absolutely no, unless there is a real showing that a child is abused, or you really believe yourself that there's probable cause of abuse or neglect. If a DCS worker tries to put you in that position, which would be an unlawful seizure, you should just say, I can't do that without having probable cause of a crime. So, it's really understanding your limits. Way back in 2007, I had a case where these DCS workers went out to this family's house in the evening, and they took two cops with them, two sheriff deputies. And the dad happened to be outside, and they were talking to the dad, and they asked the dad to come inside. And the dad said, no, let me go in. He had girls. He had like 4 teenage girls in the house. He said, let me go in first. I want to see if everybody's dressed and decent. And he stepped to walk in the door, and the cops followed him in the door, and then the CPS workers behind him. As a cop, again, you should say, if you don't have exigent circumstances, if you don't have something in plain sight, if you don't have a warrant, if you don't have probable cause for an arrest, you have to respect those Fourth Amendment restrictions. And just, if they ask for assistance, I don't think you can deny it. Unfortunately, I wish you could, because having the presence of law enforcement at your door is very intimidating. But you can at least stand back off the porch, just observe to make sure that the CPS worker is not put at risk, but that you don't take their commands to do something that violates the Constitution. And I've had CPS workers lie to cops and tell them that they had a removal order when they didn't. So, it's okay to say, if they are going to do a removal, can you show me the order? Can I take a look at the order? I need to have some confirmation that you have that before we do this very invasive law enforcement procedure. So I appreciate you asking that, and I hope that gives some guidance.
All right, guys. Well, thank you all for that very much. You guys all have a good weekend. We'll catch you all next week on Monday when we get hot on this stuff. So thank you, Connie, very much for Connie Friday. We'll see you next Friday.
All right.
All right. Thank you. All right, guys. All right, everybody. Well, another Connie Friday has gone by. It's so good to hear from her. She's such a good, that's a woman that's pushing forward in this movement, and she's getting things done. She is not only hunting for justice, she's seeking it and she's getting it. So, follow what she's got going on, guys, and listen to what she says. It's very important. We all have our own stories, but it's very important to listen to these people that are getting things done, because that's how we do get things done. Make sure, again, that you liked and subscribe to us, share, tell your friends about it, tell everybody about it. Keep CPS out of your life from last weekend. Hey, Lieutenant Larry B., if you could email us at abolishcps.com@gmail.com, that would be really cool. We'd like to get in touch with you, because we'd like to talk with you. And as far as everything else goes, thank you all for being a part of this. We're growing a little bit by little bit. Hey, Peggy Dupree's getting things done too. That's what Brenda Cambron says, and Brenda gets a hell of a lot of things done. We all are getting things done. We're all packing it up. But I'm going to tell you right now, I'm the CPS Punisher. I'm tired. I'm going to call it a night. Thank you all for everything. Have a good night. subscribe, man. Y'all know, we try to play on these videos, and believe what you will, I swear to God they're throwing us, because every other YouTube thing I try to play, except for Connie's videos. Like and subscribe, CPS out of your lives. We're going.